Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ethan.
And I'm Bryan.
And welcome to the Loki Season 1, Episode 1 podcast. Emphasis on the Season 1 because this show is slated for a second season next year. So, with that said, before we begin, we'd like to ask you to subscribe to our channel so you can keep up to date with all of our Loki Season 1 episode review and synopsis, and make sure that you watch Loki Season 1 on Disney Plus every Wednesday this time. They have moved the scheduling from Fridays to Wednesdays now, which was a pain in the ass during pre-recording scheduling. But, before you... and make sure before you tune into any more of this video is that we are going to be spoiling this plot rotten, folks. So, I want to just put a big spoiler alert alarm, I guess, for the video. So make sure that you watch the episode that we're about to discuss before you come back and listen to our review and synopsis of it, our live reactions to it. It's cool. So you have anything more to add to this, Bryan?
No. Just again, emphasis on spoilers. Because I would highly suggest that, unlike the other shows, this is definitely one that you would not want to get spoiled for you.
Oh, yes.
At least in my opinion.
Definitely. It's I feel like I don't know how other Marvel fans have been feeling with this show in particular as compared to the other two previous ones. Is that with the other two shows, I feel like it kind of took a while for them, at least. I don't know about you or me, for people to actually really get hooked into it. Whereas this one, it got people hooked right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we'll be discussing why that is potentially. So, and now, also another side note, I like to do this for every episode one. Marvel Legends, they came out with one for Loki, because it's a name of the show, and the Tesseract, Loki's favorite toy.
They gave an object?
They gave...
Legends episode?
Yes, they gave an object a Legends episode. It was actually pretty funny.
Hell?
Yeah, it's one of the... It's one of the most, if not the most, main plot MacGuffin throughout the first saga of the MCU. It's in almost every other movie.
Yep.
Or at least referenced. In the Legends episode, I completely forgot that Tesseract was in the Captain Marvel movie. Completely forgot about that.
That's right. Well, then again, everyone forgot Captain Marvel.
Oh, yeah. We did a podcast on that one years ago. It's not up on the channel yet. It will be soon. My opinions on that film have changed since then, so you can cringe at my old past self. Anyways, let's get into the episode synopsis of Loki Season 1, Episode 1, titled Glorious Purpose.
Oh, yes.
Alright, so, we kind of have to recap a bit of what actually happened, because if we remember, Loki died in Infinity War, so and not the fake deaths that he's famously known to do. He actually did die in Infinity War. So we're wait a minute, now he's back. How did that happen? Well, the show reminds us, during the whole time heist plot of Avengers Endgame, where our favorite Avengers went back in time to steal all the all the Infinity Stones, rather, they kind of did the oopsies during the 2012 Space Stone retrieval mission.
The opening of this episode is a little bit of a recap, but now we're in Loki's perspective, or at least the 2012 Avengers perspective. We're not in the perspective of the future Avengers like we were in Endgame. But yeah, we're back in the events of 2012 with Loki being whisked away off to prison until, as we all know, Hulk had to go down the stairs, didn't like that very much, and slammed the door in future Tony Stark's face, sending the Tesseract flying out of the briefcase that they had it in, therefore letting it get into the hands of Loki, who used it to whisk himself away.
Yes. And I
into
remember
a spin-off show.
yes, I remember we made that joke 2 years ago.
Yes, we did.
So, all right, bye,
Whisked himself
Loki.
away.
See you in your TV show.
So yeah, he whisks himself away using the Space Stone. Now in Avengers Endgame, that's the last we saw of Loki. But in this, we finally get to see where Loki went after the Marvel title card. Woo!
Woohoo!
And so we learned that Loki, whether this probably wasn't intentional. I think it was him trying to just get out of there and not necessarily knowing where he's going, because he ends up in Mongolia.
Right. In the Gobi Desert.
Yep. And he doesn't just calmly appear either like he did when he left. No. He comes flying out of this portal that just opens in the sky above Mongolia. And so, he's in Mongolia now, with some Mongolians who are looking at him like he's a crazy person, because he is. I mean, how would you react if some foreign man fell out of the sky wearing green?
God knows what.
Well, I know that it was here in America.
How did he describe it? It was like authentic Asgardian leather or something like that.
Yes, that's how he describes it later on. But yeah, no, they're just confused. He is too, a little bit. And then we just get right into it, because some soldiers come through a little portal. They examine the Tesseract. Loki looks all confused, asking what the hell they're doing. Then I want to say the leader of this squad of soldiers comes through. She's this big, burly woman who doesn't take no shit from nobody. And so she says that, hey, you are not in the right timeline. And Loki's like, well, I mean, what the hell are you talking about? Because he doesn't know what the hell's going on. And then this is when we get the name of who these people are. They are from something called the TVA, or the Time Variance Authority. And I guess I might as well go into what their whole thing is.
What
right
exactly is the Time Variance Authority? What are they? Why are they here? What are the comic book origins? The standard questions that I always ask.
Yeah. We do get a little bit more backstory later on in the episode. But for now, basically, the Time Variance Authority is essentially kind of like basically take a world of office people with the military and then place them outside of both space and time. And that's the Time Variance Authority. It is a combined workforce of military-esque soldiers and behind-the-desk 9-to-5 workers who make up the Time Variance Authority. And their whole job is to make sure that the flow of time stays the way it's supposed to. So anything that goes outside of that flow of time, or anything that messes with that timeline, is supposed to be found and reset. Because resetting is basically killing off the variant. The reason why it's called resetting is because that'll then eventually reset the entire timeline, setting everything back into its place.
Oh, okay.
So anytime in the show you see someone getting vaporized, like a character does later on that Loki sees, that's being reset.
So killing them, other words.
Dying.
Right.
So the Time Variance Authority is basically just there to make sure that everything goes according to what the timeline says should happen.
Right. Then they elaborate this further throughout the episode, and we'll get to it. But remember those lips?
Those lips?
Remember when one of the TVA people just hit Loki, then everything went slow, but she was still.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, okay. So Loki starts mouthing off against the leader of this squad. I can't remember her. I don't know if her character had a name. But she hits Loki in the face, and what happens is Loki starts going at, as she explains, 1/16th speed, but he's feeling all of the pain in real time. As he's going in 1/16th speed, like right as she brings him back to real time, she puts this like belt thing around his neck, and that prohibits him from using his powers. Well, no, that doesn't prohibit him from using his powers. The Time Variance Authority homeland is what prohibits him from using his powers. But the belt allows it to basically... It allows the person who put it on, the criminal...
It's like a shock collar, but not really a shock collar.
Yeah, basically. Instead of shocking you, it just takes you back to a previous position that you were in.
Or whatever that remote does.
Yeah.
It's complicated, timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly.
Chronomancy is a very powerful magic.
Exactly.
That's why it was banned in the Dark Books.
So then, Loki is then taken to the TVA headquarters.
Yep. And when he gets there, there's a reference to the scrolls because there's a variant scroll that's getting checked in. There are also some little references, people that you can find throughout this episode. I'm not going to get into all that nitty-gritty stuff. But yeah, so this is where we get our first look at what some of the office stuff looks like here in the TVA, which I'm just going to say it now. The TVA in this show looks stunning.
Yeah, eventually later we do come to like a camera pan of what the outside world of this TVA realm, I guess we can call it.
Yeah, because it really is like its own thing.
Right, it's like you said earlier, divorced from like reality and time itself. It's some like there.
Because the way that it looks like a combination of both like older technology and future technology.
What do you mean by that?
Well, because I mean, like I'm looking here at the like the first look of the office here at the TVA when Loki's first brought in, and the computers that they have, like the computer screens and the way that the office is even kind of set up, it's very reminiscent of like the 80s and 90s. But then like later on we see like flying cars and stuff, which to us is future-ish technology, and so it's a very nice blend of both.
The main thing I got from it was like everything's gold.
That too.
Exactly. Loki goes through all the prisoner processing, transformation, and stuff. He gets processed through their system.
Yes.
And then while waiting in their their main lobby, basically through all the like the ropes and stuff that you see in a bank lobby, I suppose. Just
real quick, and that's my favorite part of the processing, honestly, is the part where he has to sign confirming that huge stack of paper is everything that he's ever said.
Like a whole transcript of his entire dialogue from the moment of birth until he's at that desk right now. Even live, when Loki says what, the printer the printer just prints out a transcript of his sentence. This is absurd. And then that gets printed out as well. And then and then you can see the look on Tom Hiddleston's face. That was good acting. He's trying so hard not to flap his lips after that.
Right? Because he doesn't want to add more to it.
It's hilarious.
And even I also love the entire deadpan face that the man behind the desk has, because that. So later on we learned that everyone in the TVA cannot grow old or anything. From the time that they are brought into existence, they have one purpose to live for. They're basically set in a job, and that's what they do. So you can tell that this man has been working this job for a long time. Because he's just there, deadpan, just sign here.
Yeah.
And so I just really wanted to talk about that one part, was just him having to sign the paper. But yeah, no, so he goes into this line, and so throughout his time here so far, there has been this other man that's also been there. As far as I know, he doesn't even get a name, and he's just there for some comedic relief in his time in the episode. For example, when they get to the lobby where you have to take a ticket. When he's first asked to take a ticket, he's like, "What is this, a deli?" And then he just skips by it. But yeah, there's just this little comic relief character.
Yeah, I thought, given the whole premise of the TVA and how people get brought here, I thought they were going to elaborate on what other people here have gotten themselves into, because we know how Loki got here in the first place. It was very, very complicated, to say the least. I just want to know how others had gotten there, and then they just kill them off.
Yeah, no, I think it would be interesting. I mean, there is a chance that we might see that in one of the later episodes.
Perhaps.
We might see an example of what someone has to do in order to break the sacred timeline. Speaking of the sacred timeline, I guess it's time to get into how one breaks the timeline.
Yeah, what exactly did that 4x3 origin animation voiced by Thors Son have to tell us?
I love how I just love that you explain every bit of it.
I love how I phrased that too, yes.
She tells us that at the beginning of time, there were multiple universes and multiple timelines. And all these timelines were able to live by themselves and were able to do their own thing. However, when you have multiple groups of things that are able to do their own thing, sometimes, war breaks out. And so a war broke out between the different timelines and multiverses. And so what happened is these three all-knowing timekeepers, I'm going to call them time wizards because I like to, and you can fight me over that. So these three time wizards came together and took all the timelines and multiverses and put them into one single timeline called the Sacred Timeline. I know, very specific name. Anyways, so the Sacred Timeline was then created, and in turn, because, when you have one giant thing like this, you need something to keep it in check and make sure that it doesn't get too out of hand. And so that's where the TVA comes in. The TVA is there to make sure that the sacred timeline stays one. If anything happens, any person goes out of their way to screw that over, like Loki did in Endgame, then they break off the timeline and it starts to diverge and become a separate thing, creating, as we know, as what we would call a parallel universe. And so the TVA calls these individuals variants. And so throughout the episode and probably throughout the show, you'll hear them call Loki the variant Loki and things like that. That's because he's a variant. He is someone that isn't supposed to be there. He's not supposed to be. He was supposed to be captured, but he wasn't because the Avengers screwed up. And so, yeah, we got variants, the TVA, and the all-knowing time wizards. Another thing that I should probably point out is that when a timeline breaks off, that break-off point is called a nexus point. If you don't remember from watching our WandaVision podcast, which you probably should, I did mention Nexus there, but in that context, I was talking about Nexus beings, which can tie into a Nexus point. So a Nexus point, as this show explains, is a point in the timeline where it breaks off from the original, from the sacred one, and starts to create its own. Later on in the episode, we hear them talk about how a timeline is reaching that red line. That red line is what is how far the timeline has to go before it becomes a separate timeline altogether, before it can be irreversible. That's what a Nexus point is. A Nexus being is someone like Wanda, and Nexus beings are people who have the ability to change reality as we know. So this is definitely not going to be the last time we hear the word Nexus.
Okay, gotcha.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and it's a very complex thing that they describe about, because when it comes to time travel or time-related plots within like any story or storyline, it's important to establish your rules for time travel or time anything, so you don't fall into this fall into the loop of having to like not follow the rules of logic. I guess it's a very complicated thing, because time
Yes.
travel is not a real thing, and so it's I don't know how to describe it. There's a way of doing it and not to do it, and if the piece of art establishes its own rules for time travel, that's how it will remain good and consistent. But if you don't, you can find yourself getting into a lot of trouble with your own story because you failed to.
And see, that's the thing, because so far in the MCU, this is the third mention of time, and it's the third different version of how time travel works. Because the first version of time travel we got was Doctor Strange in Doctor Strange, with him using the Time Stone, which in that it was mainly just reversing time, putting things back into the place they were, slowly speeding up time, and causing time loops. That's what that was. And then in Endgame, we got the Quantum Realm, which was like, hey, if we go through here, we can time travel. I see this as an absolute win. I mean, so that kind of happened. And now we have the TVA who can just pop in, do what they need to, and then leave. And how the TVA, so the reason why no one knows about the TVA is because the TVA have these reset bombs that reset the timeline, basically like making it to where no one will remember it, nothing even happened.
Right, and they're doing this, like, given the premise of how they've established the time rules here, is that, like, everything within the context of the MCU, everything that has happened was always meant to be. They sort of take that, the Doctor Who way of approaching it is, like, even though you can travel through time and space each time and, like, change things up, it was actually always meant to be that way. And so that's how they justify the time travel shenanigans from Avengers Endgame was all right, given their premise here, and whereas Loki's escape from the 2012 timeline was not okay.
Yes. And another thing is that throughout the episode until like the end, Loki doesn't believe any of this time travel stuff. He thinks that it's all just bogus, that it's all just an illusion.
Like this realm in general, he doesn't believe that it is a real thing.
He just thinks it's one giant cruel illusion.
Right. And it takes him a while to finally believe the truth behind the place. But we'll get to that. Going beyond the animation now that the show has laid out its whole premise and laid out its rules for how the time traveling and time rules work in this series. We then go to
1549 France.
We're then it was like, yeah, we see the title of the ever changing Loki thing, and then we go to Aix-en-Provence, France. France 15.
I wasn't even gonna try. So all I can pronounce is province, France. That's it. I cannot pronounce the first two syllables.
We are then the audience is then taken to 1549, where we're then introduced to Owen Wilson's character. Okay, so I actually didn't know that Owen Wilson was in this series. Wow. I didn't know that Owen Wilson was in this series until about like a week before the show came out, when they released some sort of like highlight or trailer or showcase for something like that. I had no idea, because every time I've ever seen Owen Wilson in anything, he's always the blonde dude, the laid back blonde dude who's, I think, funny. Or a talking car. So, given his whole makeover here, that is spectacular makeup. That is unrecognizable makeup and costuming that they put on Owen Wilson. I had no idea. I think that is very impressive.
I have to agree. After hearing you be like, holy shit, Owen Wilson, I was like, it really made me actually appreciate a lot more the work that they did on his character to make him not look quite like Owen Wilson.
Exactly. It is, it's just jaw-dropping to see what they did there.
Yep. And here is when we see another job that the TVA gives. I'm not going to say offers, because you don't really get to pick your job. But another job that TVA gives, and that's essentially a time detective. Is what I'm going to say.
That's basically the role. Like, Owen Wilson plays this guy named Agent Mobius, and he's basically like a police detective trying to figure out the clues and all the things for because what we have right here, what we have here in France is a murder scene.
Yes.
Like a crime scene, rather. Yeah, somebody.
Which I was not expecting this to be a buddy cop story.
That'd be funny though.
But yeah, this is when we finally get the name, not necessarily the names of individuals, but the TVA military is called Minutemen.
That's right. I remember that.
Please soak in that pun as well as you can. We will probably get many more time puns as the show progresses. But yeah, so the military are called Minutemen, and here is a crime scene of Minutemen that have been killed, with Agent Mobius watching over them. Or not watching, but looking over them, trying to figure out what the hell happened. They also learned that the reset charge that we talked about earlier, that is able to basically erase all mention of the TVA ever being there, has been taken because it wasn't actually set. And so, yeah, murder scenes. Gotta love them.
Right. And that's when like a kid walks into the church and it's like, oh shit, what do we do now? Vaporize.
So he's with this other Minutemen soldier, and the Minutemen soldier immediately, because soldier training probably that the TVA gives, is like, we gotta reset this kid. And Mobius is like, calm down, okay? No one said kill him yet. And so, Agent Mobius goes over to the kid, tries to get as much information as he possibly can. Another thing that TVA field workers have to go through is, and probably even the office workers, is they have to know and learn every known language in the timeline.
Oh boy.
So that means French, German, all Earth languages, but that also would include any and all alien languages, because as we saw in the beginning, Skrulls can come here, which would imply that anything could. He shows this kid a little stick man, and then he asks the kid who did this, and the kid points up to a stained glass, a stained window pane in the church that shows a picture of the devil.
Mephisto.
Mephisto!
No.
God, we were finally right about it. It's Mephisto
there.
all along.
He's there. Bro, I love how Mephisto has just become the biggest meme of the year.
But yeah. And then he also notices that the kid has blue on his teeth. And so he asks the kid what it is. And the kid shows him. And it was, I want to say, bubble gum?
It was some sort of blue chewing gum, which packaged in a very commercial thing. What I'm trying to get is chewing gum like that did not exist in 1549. I don't have to look that up. That's just common sense game.
Yep. So I'm looking at it right now. It's artificially flavored chewing gum called Kablooey, and it's blueberry flavored. And then at the end, the Minuteman that was there with him is like, "Hey, there's a new variant," and tells him about Loki, basically.
Yes, is handed Loki's profile.
And so then, after that scene, we then cut to Loki's official trial in front of a judge. He is put in front of a judge to answer for his crimes, to plead guilty or non-guilty, and what his punishment may be. As we see, something that I didn't actually notice is that there's actually people in this courtroom.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to, I think that, because, I mean, if this is like any other court-based system, people can just randomly show up to courts and just watch trials. And so that might be what these people are here for. They're just here to watch a show.
Maybe they're on break and they don't have anything else to do on their break.
Maybe. But yeah, another thing is get used to them calling Loki Laufey Son, because if you don't remember, Loki was adopted.
And Laufey Son was the clan of the Frost Giants.
No. So basically, how Norse gods work is so basically there's Thor, Odin's son. Odin's son.
Oh, I'm dumb. I didn't recognize that before.
Laufey was the name of Loki's father. Laufey was the leader of the Frost Giants. So Loki Laufey's son. I don't know if it's this. I don't know if you would use it the same with daughters, where it would be like something so and so, like Odin daughter.
So would that basically, theoretically, would that mean Loki's children would be Loki's son and Thors son?
Probably.
Wow, I hate that I hadn't recognized that sooner. Odin's.
I'm trying to remember my Norse mythology right now. All I know is that Thor has two sons, but I don't remember if they're called Thors Son.
It's Kratos.
Kratos.
Boy.
But yeah, Loki is brought in front of a judge, and
right, the judge. What?
Loki still believes that all of this is just an elaborate show, that it's not real. And so when the judge asks, do you plead guilty or not guilty? He's like, do I plead guilty to thinking that this is an elaborate pantomime that isn't real? Yes. Things like that.
Right.
So it's very funny. Which, I mean, Tom Hiddleston finally being able to do like some comedic relief stuff.
Like he was sort of kind of like that even in the previous movies.
Yeah. But in this to finally see it like front and center.
Right, because
in
he's
that,
the main
it was-
character.
Well, yeah. Really, I hadn't noticed. He just has fun with it because, again, he doesn't think that it's real. And like halfway through his trial, Mobius comes in and he like saunters his way in and quietly sits down in one of the benches. And so then he is sentenced to be reset. And
that's when Wilson approaches the bench.
Yep. Wilson's like, "Excuse me, I have an idea." Wow. And so he approaches the bench, and I swear, him and the judge, there is something between them, because I could feel some tension in the sexual manner.
Okay.
I'm just saying, okay? It seems like there's something going on between these two.
Perhaps.
I feel a romance.
Maybe you just want that to happen, Bryan.
Shut the fuck.
Mephisto.
Yes, I'm gonna start a fan fiction. So Mobius stops him from getting reset, and is able to take him in for a little bit and try to talk some sense into him. This is where we finally see the extravagance that is the TVA, with the panning shot that you talked about earlier.
Right, yeah, that's what you're talking about. Yes, the camera pan shot from the outside window. Next, we go into the interview room between Wilson and Loki, and we spend a good chunk of the episode in this room.
Yes. So yeah, now Mobius, it knows everything that's going to happen to Loki and everything that did happen to Loki, but he doesn't know who Loki is as a person, and so that's what a majority of this episode is him just trying to learn who Loki actually is, like as a person, not just as a speck of time. And so, like, he knows some things, like how he likes to talk, how he thinks that he's this big macho man, things like that. But he doesn't know who Loki is. And so he also gives Loki a little bit of a insight on how the TVA works, how they're all like assigned jobs, how time passes differently, so they're able to basically, almost in a way, live forever. They still grow, they just grow at a slower rate than we would.
Yeah.
And so yeah, we then enter Mobius's office, I want to say.
Some sort of interview room.
Oh, no, I just saw the name. It's a time theater.
Time theater. Great name.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah, given the what's about to happen.
Yeah. And so basically, the time theater, what it is in it there's a little projector that is able to flash flashbacks in a projection-esque 3D space of a person's life. Whether it be their past, their present, or their future, it is able to go through every bit of their entire life. And so Mobius uses it to try to get some information out of Loki and like on who he could be. And Loki, just again, not having it, doesn't want to cooperate, doesn't want anything to do with the TVA whatsoever.
Right, he still thinks it's some sort of elaborate ruse or some sort of illusion to get him to do something. I'm not quite too sure on what it is.
Yeah.
Doesn't he describe it as like this is some sort of torture chamber, basically?
I think later on he describes it as that.
Okay.
But I know that at least like for right now, Mobius is asking questions like, "Why are you here? Like, what? Like, if you were to go back, what would you want to do?" Things like that. And again, because it's 2012 Loki. He's like, I want to take over Midgard, aka Earth. I want to be king of Earth. I want to rule the 9 realms. Which the 9 realms, it's all Norse mythology stuff.
Right.
The realms that we know of that exist in the MCU are the Dark Elves realm, which is Alfheim, Asgard, which is basically the land of gods, and Midgard, which is Earth. Those are really the only 3 that you really need to know, unless they decide to add more realms later on in the future.
Whatever realm.
You know.
Yeah, whatever. But like, what this whole scene here? What is like the objective that Wilson is trying? I just geek. I wrote down his character as Wilson. I didn't write down Mobius in my notes.
It's like Owen Wilson wants this.
Exactly. So, what exactly is Wilson trying to get out of Loki here? What is his objective? I think there is an element of him wanting to know who exactly Loki is down on the internal level, but I think there's also some sort of element of trying to get Loki to admit what he actually is instead of what he is on the outside. So, what do you think?
It's sort of a combination of the two. On one level, he wants to know who Loki is on the inside because he wants to know what makes Loki tick because of the twist at the end. Or like he wants to get Loki to understand that it's not everything around him that's lying to him, it's him lying to everything around him. Where he's trying to, I can't remember exactly what he says, but he says that it's all part of the illusion, just a cruel, elaborate trick formed by the weak to intimidate the strong. Something like that is what he says.
So, from what I'm understanding, Wilson's objective was to understand what makes Loki's tick by understanding his insides, but also at the same time trying to get Loki to admit what he actually is instead of the fake persona that he has been putting on.
Yes.
Because what I'm basically trying to say is that Loki wants to be a ruler. He wants to rule Earth, the 9 realms, etc., etc. That's what he wants to do, but yet he fails every time. And I think Wilson's character is trying to get Loki to make him realize that his role, Loki's role within the timeline, was never meant to be a ruler and was always meant to be an obstacle for others' upbringings. Mm-hmm. If I'm not wrong.
No, you're not. That's what he tries to make Loki understand, is that Loki was always supposed to fail because, well, as we see a little bit later in the episode, Loki basically has this scene where he watches his entire character arc.
Right, yeah. It's like the scene with the two of them together. Wilson just shows Loki, like, his past and stuff that has already happened and what Loki already knows, including some weird scene about him jumping off an airplane with a bomb and some cash in the bag. That was weird.
Yeah, he was someone by the name of D.B. Cooper, which Loki explains that was just a dare that Thor that he lost. It was a bet that he lost against Thor. That's why he did that.
That was weird.
I think that was just some joke that they just added in.
Yeah.
It might come to significance later on, but who knows? Probably not.
And then Wilson then he just turned on the timer of the film a fast forward to 2013 of where Loki's mother died at the hands of the Dark Elves in Thor: The Dark World.
Yep, because Loki told him to go left instead of right.
Yeah, and that's when that's another thing that Loki is like doesn't believe of what he's seeing with his own eyes, because as far as he knows, 2012 Loki, his mother is still alive, and what Wilson is showing him is absolutely fake. It's not true, but he doesn't know that yet, and he doesn't understand what this place is just yet.
Because up at this moment, he just sees it as some form of torture or torment that has been preyed upon him, where he is forced to watch. Because honestly, even though he doesn't show it that much, especially in those earlier films, is when it comes to his mother, he does care about his family. He does care about Thor, about Odin, Thor, and his mother. A connection that I was actually able to make while watching this episode is that Thor and Loki's relationship is very similar to that of Nebula and Gamora. Where they're both feuding siblings, but when they finally set aside their differences, they realize that they're actually very much the same.
Yeah.
Because with Nebula and Gamora, Nebula was always trying to be as good as Gamora, when Gamora was just trying to be as good as Nebula. They learned that they were actually very similar in the way that they were trying to do things and protect each other when they weren't trying to kill each other.
Right.
And it's the same thing with Thor and Loki. Thor and Loki were basically able to make up in Thor Ragnarok.
Get help.
They were able to finally set apart their differences and learn that Thor always loved Loki. He was just waiting for Loki to love himself.
Interesting.
Tough love.
Yeah, that's probably what Wilson was trying to get at with Loki as well, is to make him understand of what he really is, and he tries pressuring that like a lot.
I think throughout this episode, inside Mobius's mind, he's just like, Loki, for the love of God, please just go through your character arc already. I'm trying to get through this as much as possible. I've already seen your future, man. Come on. I feel like that's what's going on through Mobius's head, but he's trying to like keep it all in and be as calm as possible and as nice as possible.
Right. Because as far as we know, like, Wilson says that, like, I've been a big fan of yours for a long time, and then, like, internally he could just, like, screaming like a fangirl, oh my god. That's so funny. It's funny.
But yeah, he basically is like, look, you weren't supposed to pick up the Tesseract, you were supposed to go to prison on Asgard so that you could kill your mom, okay? That's what was supposed to happen.
Right.
But yeah.
After lingering here a bit, one of the Minutemen guards, like the main Minutewoman guard rather, comes in and interrupts the whole briefing, pulls Wilson out of the chamber to discuss something, just business talk. That just
it's
gives
to discuss Loki.
Yeah, and that gives Loki the opportunity to escape.
Yeah, so as you already said, the woman leads Wilson out and is like, hey, I don't like your plan. Wilson's like, it's gonna work, trust me. And then they go back into the room, Loki's gone. Thank you, Minute Woman, you did such a great job.
Fuck!
The name of the thing that's around Loki's neck is called the Twister.
Sex in a box.
It just loops the person. It doesn't loop anything around them. That's how he explains it.
Gotcha.
So it loops the wearer back into previous positions. But yeah, Loki is able to escape. And what he does is he loops himself around to alternate areas, different places. And then he sees the man that he first saw when he entered this building, the TVA behind the circular desk, who is taking stuff to evidence, including the Tesseract. and we see Wilson and the woman running after him and trying to find him. The soldier obviously wanting to reset him, and Wilson's like, no, don't reset him, don't prune him, just bring him to me. And this actor who plays the like behind the desk man, Casey, that's his name. This man who plays Casey, he does a great job in this, because I genuinely thought he did not know what a fish was.
That's so weird.
Well, I mean, it does make sense. I mean, these people, like, other than the field agents who are supposed to go out into like the worlds and pick people up and stuff, they would obviously know what things are. But these people who just have the desk jobs, the 9-to-5 jobs, they wouldn't know what anything outside of the TVA is.
Right, and that's the fascinating part, because you'd never expect like a grown man in this world to like ever utter the sentence, "What is a fish?" Loki then forces this guy to take him to like the filing cabinet of where the Tesseract had been placed, and so he does that. And as Loki opens it up and takes his favorite cube of all time, he also catches a glimpse of what else is inside the drawer there, which are
other Infinity Stones.
Infinity Stones, and it takes a while for him to realize that, like, what are these? Are these Infinity Stones? And it's like, it's not just like the 6 that we know of. It's like repeats of like the same ones over and over. There are like about 4 green ones and like 3 red ones.
I think there's only one soul one though.
I would probably need to look at that image again.
Yeah, no, I have it here. There's 4 blue ones. There's like 5 red ones. There's 4 green ones, and there's 2 soul ones.
Okay, but yeah,
because I'm pretty sure the soul one is the like orange yellow one, the biggest one.
I thought that'd be the mind one.
Oh, then it might be the mind. I don't know. I don't remember what colors are which. I just know red's reality and green is time.
Oh, you're dumb.
Well, I'm sorry. The comic book panels had different colors than the movies.
Well, comic books are stupid, Bryan. There are a bunch of repeat Infinity Stones. This makes you wonder. Like, the Marvel theorists are probably all over this one. It's Mephisto gang, but it's like, who could have violated the timeline that many times? Or it's like, maybe not just like one person. Like, who would have the power to wield these Infinity Stones, multiple ones at that, over and over and over again, to mess up the timeline?
I think what you could think of is that you could really think of it like this. According to the sacred timeline, Thanos was supposed to have all the Infinity Stones and snap half the universe away. So I think the reason why they have all these other Infinity Stones is because that was other people trying to get their hands on the Infinity Stones.
Oh.
But again, because Thanos is the only one that's supposed to be able to get them,
which means Red Skull was always supposed to have, like, quote, died and vanquished Dormir.
Yep.
This is so interesting. And
it really is.
Loki also realizes that too. If there are repeats of the same Infinity Stones there, he realizes, like, oh, this place is not an illusion. This is like he says, like, the most powerful place in the world. Like, he finally accepts the reality of the TVA.
Mm-hmm. Because here in the TVA, the Infinity Stones have no power. And the Infinity Stones are supposed to be the most powerful things in the universe. And yet here they're used as paperweights.
Then the Minutemen finally catch up to him. Then Loki's like, nope, out of here. Then teleports back to the the interview room.
Yep. He goes back to the theater, and there he decides, I'm going to look into my future.
Yeah, like, out of curiosity, he decides to go past his 2012 timeline and just keep going and see what happens. Like, he's already seen his mother passing away in the Dark World, so he figures he'd watch that again and cry. And then he fast forwards to Ragnarok, Thor Ragnarok, and watches his father die, as well as he and his brother getting along. And I wish they had played Get Help again. Oh, that would have been amazing.
That would have been great.
That would be hilarious. Then he cries at that and laughs about it. Like, it's a very, I don't know the words. I'm a very emotionless being.
Yeah, he does get very emotional in this climax of the episode.
Right, and it's like it's a very odd thing. It's like it's a very emotional scene for him, even though what he is seeing is stuff that we've already seen before.
And
it's kind of
we've
like
already
that
seen
weird.
this entire character arc, but now we're seeing it happen.
It's this
in
weird
real
thing.
time.
Yeah, it's this weird thing of like seeing the same scenes over again. Like, we watched them originally in their respective movies from the third person perspective, but now we're doing it again. I don't know if this is considered second person, where we are watching a character react to another thing that we've seen before. I don't know if that's considered second person, or maybe it's a fourth person. I just made it up, but it's weird how they expect the audience to like recollect that and get
Gotcha.
something out of it.
I get what you're saying. It's not second person.
Okay.
I think if anything, it's still third person. It's just shown through a different perspective.
Okay then.
I think that's the best way to put it.
Yeah, it's weird to say the least,
Because
but powerful.
in those other movies like Thor Ragnarok, for example, and Thor: The Dark World, we saw those in third person, yes, but they were through Thor's perspective. We were there with Thor when he was going through those movies, and now we're seeing it through Loki's perspective of Loki seeing those events happen. Does that make sense?
Yeah, if you were gonna say, because if you hadn't said that previous part, whereas like if we saw them through Loki's perspective, it wouldn't be through like this. It'd just be seeing through the original movies, like from the bad guy's perspective.
Yeah.
But Loki in this context is not the bad guy.
Nope. And then he even sees himself die.
Yep. Finally got to Infinity War, where Thanos snaps his neck, and I like how the film reel just ends in the projector.
Yeah. Because that's supposed to be the end of his story.
Right. It would have been funny though if like Loki had like was watching his future and is like, there's a fake death right there. There's another fake death right there. I'm so cunning. I'm so great. And then when it got to Thanos, it's like, that's another fake death right there. And then the film just ends. Oh no.
And the file. And so then he starts laughing. And
Right.
that's when Mobius comes back in, I think. No, it's the general woman.
No, it is Mobius. Right?
Isn't it?
No, you are right. Yeah, because they fight.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
No.
that's what they fight. Loki manages to get his collar off and put it onto the woman, then finally manipulate the collar with the remote. And so he toys with it a bit, but then I don't know if you got from this, but remember when he just started doing it very fast, and the woman was like, stop, up.
Yeah.
I feel like he might have been enraged from what he had seen from his future, and was just, as soon as he got faster and faster, he was just like, I don't know, letting off steam. Like all the rage was just like channeling.
Yeah, no, I could sense that too.
Coolio. I'm good. I'm not the only one.
But yeah.
Because like maybe put it through this perspective. This is 2012 Loki, and what he had seen from his future from then until when he died. He's seen something that he probably did not want to admit about himself, and that was probably the I guess the humbleness and the realness of him actually caring about his family, and that's something that the 2012 Loki doesn't want to admit himself because he just wants to rule them all, probably, and he got enraged by that, which is probably what Wilson wanted to get out of him in the first place.
Yeah. Again, he just wants to know what makes him tick.
Right. And so after Loki did that, he just kind of like sits down with his favorite cube, the Tesseract.
Yep. And then that's when Mobius comes in.
Right.
And he's like, have you tried using that thing? Yes, multiple times.
Yeah.
But yeah. Mobius comes in and starts talking to him one-on-one. And so earlier in the episode, Mobius kept on asking the question, do you enjoy hurting people? And now we finally get to hear Loki's answers.
Right. I remember now because Wilson played the scene of Loki like screwing out somebody's eyeball from the Avengers movie.
Mm-hmm.
And Loki back then, Tom Hiddleston had this very sadistic looking smile on his face whilst doing that scene. It is an amazing smile.
It really is. No, he's really good at playing a bad guy.
Yeah, but then Wilson used that scene back on him, and Loki, I remember Loki kind of like looked away from it.
Mm-hmm.
And is like, didn't want to admit something there again. And then this is what Wilson was trying to explain now. Well, Loki is trying to explain that like he doesn't enjoy the killing, but in order for what he has to be, that's what he has to do.
Yeah.
In order to live up to
as he said, glorious purpose.
Right. In order to live up to his glorious purpose, that's what he has to do.
Mm-hmm.
And
I'm gonna quote his mini monologue here. I actually have the quote now. He says, because it's part of the illusion. Come on, subtitles. Sorry. It's the cruel, elaborate trick conjured by the weak to inspire fear. And when he first used that quote, he was using it more of an insult against the others, or against the TVA, being like, hey, you guys are the weak ones trying to intimidate me with this elaborate trick. But after he learned that it was real, and after learning that, he had a character arc of becoming a good man and a good brother and almost a hero, basically, he now uses that quote to describe himself as the weak one, and the TVA or the Avengers to be the strong ones. He knew that he was weak, but he had to put on this performance of being the bad guy because he felt that he had to. Again, I think that this... I think that's going to probably be one of the main themes of this show, is purpose.
Yeah, purpose. Especially since, like, this is kind of a weird way to think about it. Our three space lizards that have constructed this one consistent timeline, then just has the TVA to fix everything. Because like before Loki, because like in like the very beginning of the interview, he was questioning whether there was this whole big timeline thing, where it's like everything was created out of just these three lizards had dictated everything that was happening to be in the world, basically. So it's probably like a Protestant way of looking at it. Is like God. There's definitely a theme of like these three lizards are basically God, basically, and have constructed this timeline for everything to follow. It's like a Protestant view of looking at it, of like how God basically just made a set of rules and laws for the universe to follow. Like God is not a micromanager in this perspective, and that's why good and bad are allowed to flourish, because he doesn't manage these things. He doesn't dictate every single person's personality from it. So that's why Loki has this question of like, if there is this one consistent timeline, how are people supposed to have made choice? Basically, like he wants to rule. And so, like, I have the quote here. It's like, the first and most oppressive lie ever uttered was the song of freedom. For nearly every living thing, choice breeds shame, uncertainty, and regrets. There's a fork in every road, yet the wrong path is always taken. Period. And so that was, and then Wilson's character rebutted with, and so like the person not in this nearly every living thing category, that would be you, right? And you would be the ruler of how everything is dictated, right? Yes, because I know the correct way. Me, Loki, the ruler of everything. Basically. And so basically he's saying that there does need to be a micromanager for there to be, quote, good in this world, his version of good, basically. And so that's why there is conflict between his vision of the world of like correct choice and the Three Lizards set timeline of the non-micromanaged world. It's a very complicated way of looking at it. To put it into secular terms, if people don't follow the Protestant vision, they're definitely hinting a theme of like conflicts between the individual choice and eternal fate. So with that said, you want to get to the plot twist now?
Yeah. So the plot twist of this episode is that after Mobius is able to finally talk to Loki and finally be like, hey, here's why I wanted to get all this stuff out of you. It's because we're chasing down this variant that's killing off my Minutemen, and we might need your help. And he's all like, and let me guess, you need the god of mischief to help you find out who's doing this? And he's like, well, we know who's doing it. Well, who is it?
Well, of course I know him. He's me.
Yeah, so, and that's when we are cut to a scene of Salina, Oklahoma, 1858. In the middle of this cornfield, like, another squad of Minutemen, and they had there's some sort of like tool there or weapon there in the middle of the cornfield that looked like they had sent from like 3,000 something. And so that's not supposed to be there. And so they're about to reset the place. Oh yeah, there's also some oil on the floor, which leads to the fire that the hooded figure in the distance just sets them all ablaze with, and then takes the reset bomb.
Yep.
And yeah.
That's the twist.
That's the twist, and that is the end of Loki episode 1. Now we can get into some like general feedback, our initial impressions, and like series predictions of what we think / hope will happen. We feel like a lot of people kind of got onto this series immediately on episode 1, whereas with a WandaVision and Falcon and Winter Soldier, it didn't happen immediately. So, like, what are your initial impressions from episode 1?
Well, what I'm just going to say this now. I loved this episode. Absolutely. Yes, it is still one of those first episodes getting your bearings straight kind of thing of like setting up the foundation of what the show is going to build on. Well, it is still that kind of setup of, hey, it's the first episode. We need to build the foundation. It still is able to keep you interested in it. It raises interesting ideas, not only with the time travel aspect, but also with the whole mystery behind like who they're chasing is throughout the first episode until, the twist at the end. But it is definitely a very engaging episode. Now, when it comes to the other two shows, for me personally, WandaVision, because it was the first Marvel thing we had in a while since the pandemic started, I was just instantly excited for it and was just ready to just watch something Marvel again. So that was able to instantly get me hooked. But Captain America and the Winter Soldier, or Falcon and Winter Soldier, or Captain America and White Wolf, whatever you want to call it.
And Baron Zemo and Sharon Carter.
And Baron Zemo and also Sharon Carter, yes. That too.
Hey.
That one was definitely the one that took the longest amount of time to get me hooked. Because I had to like slug my way through the first episode. And like it didn't really start getting good for me, at least until episode 3.
Yeah.
When they finally went to Madripoor.
Right. Yeah, me too.
But this show, I think we're gonna have a lot of fun with, and I'm just hoping it's not gonna. I just hope that it doesn't go too far into the confusing area of things when it comes to the time travel. I hope that they're still able to keep it relatively understandable.
Yeah.
As well as they possibly can. So yeah. Those are my impressions of it.
Cool. Yeah, I had the similar feelings. I think, yeah, with me too, WandaVision got me hooked because, like, oh, Marvel. And then, if you guys haven't listened to our opinions on Falcon and Winter Soldier, I don't like that show. So you can go watch that if you want. But this one, I think, is very interesting. I think the premise is very interesting. The whole setting is very interesting, and yeah, the character Loki himself. Loki was one of my personal favorites from the MCU previously because he wasn't a one-time villain.
He was the first and not one-time villain.
Exactly, and only, I think, at least right now. Yeah. So and there he played that very mischievous character very off well. I think it also helps that Tom Hiddleston has an excellent portrayal of him as well. Mm-hmm. So getting to see him more on screen is very, very grand and very enjoyable. Because this character was very interesting, seeing him evolve through the years and stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So, before we wrap things up, there is one last thing I want to talk about.
Yes.
Because I remembered. You didn't have to remind me.
Oh, yeah.
So, the title card of Loki. So, as I already mentioned, the reason why I think that each individual letter is different is supposed to represent like how there's different timelines and different versions of characters through variants, as we know. Well, I think that what it could also represent is that not every variant is going to be the same. And so I think that even though the variant that they're chasing is a Loki variant, I don't think that it's possibly going to be the same Loki that we know and love. For all we know, it could be a child killer. We don't know.
Oh, cool.
Maybe they just decided to save that one child because they needed convenience. Who knows? But for all we know, this could be a completely different Loki. A completely different personality. Who knows? But that's really all I had to say.
It's a very interesting cliffhanger they had left us off at.
Yes, it raises so many questions.
Cool. And before
when I say that, I mean it's one question. Who the hell is this Loki?
You have anything more to say, Bryan?
I do not.
Awesome. Well, that is our impressions review podcast, review and synopsis podcast of Loki Season 1, Episode 1. It is slated for a second season. So, with that said, thank you guys for tuning in. Have yourselves a fantastic night. Subscribe to our channel so you can keep up to date with all of our Loki Season 1 videos. And make sure to watch Loki on Disney Plus every Wednesday now. It's Wednesdays. Yeah. Have yourselves a fantastic night and take care, everyone.
Adios.
Thanks for visiting the TVA. Don't hesitate to let us know how we're doing.